I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Cultworthy. Got a very special guest returning to the show. Last time we discussed a Charles Bronson extravaganza where we talked about Death Hunt. And now we're changing the whole theme. We're doing something very different than an action drama. We're talking about one of my favorite cult films of all time, but we'll get to that in a second. Please welcome my guest, ERIK CLAPP of Cinema Force. Welcome back, man.
Hey man, it's good to be here. Good to be back.
A lot's happened since the Death Hunt conversation. I had the honor of doing a video essay for Cinema Force. That was a lot of fun. We did a Brain Donors, Brain Candy double feature, and I feel like that's kind of the genesis of this conversation, where we were talking about cult comedies, slapstick comedies, but even more than that, ones that were like really frowned upon. Box office bombs almost disappeared off the face of the earth until certain audiences and appreciators brought them back. And I think today's film is a perfect example of that because it almost destroyed several careers. And in a way it did for the longest time. But there is a very special generation of people that found it, loved it, cherished it, and I guess promoted it enough over the years for it to get a great Blu-ray release, get it back into the zeitgeist, people making YouTube videos and podcasts about it. What are we talking about today?
We're talking about the Adam Resnick classic Cabin Boy, starring Chris Elliott.
Is this a film that you kind of grew up with, or is it one that you discovered down the path?
Well, my path with Cabin Boy is probably... I think I'm a little older than you are. I'm 52.
44.
And so, okay, yeah. So I used to like sneak, stay up late and watch Late Night with David Letterman.
Right.
And, I would like stay up till 1 o'clock in the morning here on the West Coast and watch it. And this guy, Chris Elliott, started coming on, and I kind of got addicted to his little bits within the show. He even had like a little late night talk show on the same set while Letterman's show was going on, which was amazing. He would just poach the guests from that show onto that show and do it while they were recording that one. So I just thought his little bits were genius. And so that's how I kind of got familiar with Chris Elliott. And then I would go back to school the next day and talk to my friends, be like, hey, did you see that Chris Elliott bit? And we were like, yeah, that guy's amazing. So when Cabin Boy came out and you see the trailer, and the trailer's amazing. Like the trailer is like, looks absolutely like the best comedy that's ever been made. And so you're like super excited about it. And then when you see it, you're still kind of into it, but it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be, but then once you go into the creation of the film and realize everything that goes around it, you realize, oh, wait a minute, this was supposed to be for somebody else,
Which I didn't know.
But it's still great.
Yeah, I didn't know that for years. I didn't know that until, I'm going to say, like podcasts, YouTube videos, because there wasn't even like a bonus feature on the DVD at that point. It was still just a very bare bones DVD. I heard Chris Elliott talking about it on a podcast. So for me, I'm very similar with you in the origin of like my love for this movie. Definitely the Chris Elliott bits on Letterman, then Get a Life. I was into Get a Life right when it came out. And then just seeing Chris Elliott in small roles in feature films. I think the first most recognizable one was Larry in Groundhog's Day, right? The cameraman for Bill Murray. I think that's where people started recognizing this guy as like, who is this guy? And then I saw CB4 with Chris Rock. I snuck into the theater because I was too young to see it. And he essentially is like the Marty DeBurgi of this Spinal Tap kind of wannabe, but for hip hop music. And he's great in that. And he's got a lot of great jokes too. So I was already on the Chris Elliott train, much like you. And much like you, seeing the trailers for Cabin Boy and knowing that it was going to have stop motion animation like the old Harryhausen movies, Jason and the Argonauts is like in my top 3 favorite movies of all time. So I was already like into that kind of fantasy world, and seeing that it was produced by Tim Burton, I'm like, okay, we're in for something really special. I
Yeah.
was 13 or 14 seeing this with my friends, and we were the only ones in the theater. And I was dying laughing. Another friend of mine was dying laughing. And then 2 other friends thought it was the dumbest shit they'd ever seen. And I think that moment at 13 years old, I understood that this was going to be a movie that had a split audience. I think that the 90s were like that. You know, you had films like Drop Dead Fred, you love it or you hate it. Cabin Boy,
Right.
you love it or you hate it. Ruben and Ed, you love it or you hate it. And
Yahoo Serious.
yeah, anything with Yahoo Serious, Young Einstein, Reckless Kelly, like those movies for sure, they had the love it or hate it audience. Now, because I am an appreciator of all things ridiculous, most of the time I'm on the love it side of those conversations. I just did Hudson Hawk a couple weeks ago. That's another one. You either love it or you hate it. It's just the perfect decade for that. And then when it came out on video, man, we bootlegged it right away and we just watched this repeatedly. This was always on rotation throughout the high school years, throughout the college years, and even still to this day, I'm 44 years old. I watch this movie at least twice a year. So you bringing the idea to this, talk about this is great, because I feel, again, like Cabin Boy is in the zeitgeist. And as we get in this conversation, we'll figure out why. But let's talk about this really fast. For Cabin Boy, did you have a group of friends that loved it or hated it? Did you have family members that loved it or hated it? Or was this kind of like a guilty pleasure movie that you just watched on your own because no one else wanted to share it, the experience with you?
Well, a couple things on that. I guess the first thing is I always liked it. I didn't say I like loved it, but I always liked it and appreciated it for its kind of weird Chris Elliott style humor, which I liked,
Right.
you know. And I remember watching it with my dad on VHS. I don't think I saw it at the movies. I'm pretty sure I didn't. I have a pretty good memory of things I've seen at the movies. I'm pretty sure I didn't see that. But I know we watched it on home video a couple of times. I know my dad and I got laughs out of it. I know my mom probably checked out 5 minutes in. I do have a funny story, though. I have some family members that they would like to remain anonymous, but they claim that they went to see it as a family at the theater. And after it was over, they went and asked for their money back to the guy at the movie theater. And the guy told them, they said, well, you stayed till the whole thing? And they said, yeah. Well, I don't know. And he said, well, which movie did you see? And they said, Cabin Boy. And he goes, oh, yeah, I go, it's fine. You can have your money back. So it already had a reputation as like a bad movie as it was playing in its theatrical run. So I always like that story, and it always reminds me like of the humor, like you were talking about, how it does split people.
Right.
You know, if you're looking for that traditional comedy, you're not going to get it here. It is for, I don't know if do you think it's for film buffs, or do you think it's more just for people with really eclectic senses of humor?
Oh, definitely eclectic senses of humor. And then if you're a film buff, it's a bonus, right? Because you can recognize what they're trying to pay homage to. But yeah, that's the same thing. I remember at 12 years old, maybe 13, trying to get my money back for Last Action Hero. And I like Last Action Hero better now because I get all the references and in-jokes that I didn't get when I was that age. But I was fully bought in on Cabin Boy, and a lot of people that I know are too. But I think the thing is too, is for me, Cabin Boy is a very personal experience because not a lot of people in my inner circle enjoy it as much. I screened it with a double feature with Drop Dead Fred of Love It or Hate It movies for my cult film night that I do every month. And a lot of people dug it more than Drop Dead Fred, which really surprised me because I feel like Drop Dead Fred's a little bit more grating than Cabin Boy is, because, you know,
oh yeah, for sure.
Rick Mayall has definitely got a persona about him that can be grating for some people, and some people are like kind of not on board with the whole idea of like, oh, mental illness is funny, where this is just ridiculous. But people actually dug this more than Drop Dead Fred. It surprised me because I feel like people have more nostalgia for Drop Dead Fred. I don't know, to each their own.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Drop Dead Fred, I haven't seen that in a while. I mean, it's been a long time, but Cabin Boy, it just gives me good feelings when I see Chris Elliott because it reminds me of the Letterman stuff. You know, not to reiterate that again, but I mean, Letterman's in it. So, you know, it gives me those feels of late night staying up and watching all that stuff. So,
It was a huge deal that year, though, because the Oscars of '94, which I think were like probably in February or March, Letterman was the host, and he actually made a stint saying, "Hey, I made my feature film debut this year in a film called Cabin Boy." And they showed the clip. Like, Cabin Boy actually was
Yeah.
in the Oscar ceremony, which I thought was so great because I was like, oh, wow, like they actually let him do that. Nobody likes this movie, but I guess that's the joke. And it's also probably why he
Well,
was not invited back.
yeah, and I remember too, like after it came out, even on the Letterman show, that became a recurring
It did.
bit on the show that he was in Cabin Boy. You know, he would ask guests, "Have you seen Cabin Boy?" So, you know, that the cult legend kind of started from there. You know, it wasn't going to die. Letterman wasn't going to let it die.
Well, and I like that because it is kind of like a devotion to someone that did a lot for his show, you know, like Chris Elliott on his
Yeah.
show. uh, It's funny because like Letterman has always had this curmudgeon-y air about him. Like people have always said he has a reputation of being kind of like a dick and an asshole, and that is his persona. But he also did seem to have like loyalty to people that would bring stuff to the show. And then also at the same time, Conan O'Brien's show was only like 2 or 3 years old at that time, bringing Andy
Yeah.
Richter on as Kenny to the
Right.
film, who steals every scene he's in for like the first 10 minutes and then he's gone. But again,
Well, until he comes back in a cameo, which is hilarious because it's almost like, oh, we need this guy back. So how do we get him back?
you hang in there. Yeah, it's fantastic. And that's the thing. I think this movie is a movie that has to be absorbed over time because it is so rapid fire with the jokes, and the jokes are absurd. The dialogue is absurd, and there's nothing but one-liners, and it's really hard to catch them all the first viewing. And then you, over time, it'll catch something else. You start absorbing it more, and then it becomes part of your vernacular. I quote Cabin Boy, or at least use a phrase from Cabin Boy in everyday conversation at least once a week, maybe more.
Oh yeah.
It's just
Yeah. I mean, just the Letterman bit alone, I do that one constantly. I mean, that's, you know, that's nonstop for me. Is the you want to buy you want to buy a monkey?
you want to buy a monkey, or especially the fact that he calls him a different girl's name every time. Sally, Jennifer,
Oh
Susan.
yeah. So,
You remind me of
oh,
my.
you're
my
a
niece
fancy lad,
Sally.
aren't you?
She's a dietitian. Like, what is that? Yeah, and all the time, don't let them give you any of this flank steak bullshit. Try the London broil, which is a terrible cut of meat, but I don't think they knew that when they wrote that.
Right. No, I mean it's a crazy, like, you know. I guess you go ahead. You're probably going to get into the backstory of the making of it too, which is almost as fascinating as the movie.
Well, I think that is the part that I want to talk about the most because whenever I hear people talk about this on a podcast, and I'm not talking shit on other podcasts, but it literally turns into an hour of the two people quoting the movie back and forth to each other, which, hey, I think is funny. I love that. But at the same time, we've heard it before. What I really want to talk about is how this film started off and what it was supposed to be, and then what it turned out to be, and then what it did to the people who were involved in the film. So I want to start off with Adam Resnick first.
Yeah.
So Adam Resnick, who was like the writer, producer, co-creator of Get a Life, which Get a Life's humor is very Cabin Boy adjacent. It's just kind of set in suburbia. He's a grown-up paper boy. There's Spewy the alien. Brian Doyle Murray's in it. A lot of the cast from Get a Life is in Cabin Boy.
Yeah.
Randomly, Tim Burton is a fan of Cabin Boy, or Tim Burton is a fan of Get a Life. And according to these guys, hyperbolically, I'm going to take them at their word, he just called them up out of the blue saying, hey, I miss your show, Get a Life, now that it's over. I want to do something with you. And in his mind, he wanted to do something that would take him back to the joy he had of doing Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Something more minimalist and kind of goofy and crazy after he had just done all these Batman movies and Edward Scissorhands. He's like, I want to do something smaller and silly, go back to my roots. And so, according to Resnick, they put this whole idea of Captain's Courageous meets Ray Harryhausen together, pitched it to Tim Burton. He loved it and was going to be the one to direct it. And like up until just before they started shooting, that was the plan. And Resnick's like, if this was going to be my first feature film, I would have not put Ray Harryhausen creatures in it. I wouldn't have put it on a boat. I would have made it as minimalist as possible. But instead, here is this production meant for Tim Burton. And then when he drops out to do Ed Wood, he's like, well, Adam Resnick, you can just direct it, right? You've done stuff before. He's like, I've directed segments for Letterman. Like, that's my experience.
Yeah. Yeah, he's only like what, 2 or 3, 4 years removed from being an intern on the David Letterman show, and then he's like replacing Tim Burton, for a feature film. So yeah, it was way over their heads. But even when you watch it, it does have the Burton DNA in it. It almost feels like a TV movie or a pilot or something that Tim Burton directed on the side or something, real on the cheap.
Right. It does. I mean, the sets were built, costumes were made, like there was production in this. And you can tell that it is very Tim Burton-esque. And there is that woulda, shoulda, coulda. What would the film play like? What would it look like if Tim Burton actually had done it instead of like a first-time director? But this is where I hesitate to think it would be better. I think what makes Cabin Boy so fascinating to me is the stodginess of it. The fact that it does feel like a high school production of a funny screenplay about fantastical creatures and this goofy cabin boy. The way the things are framed are very rudimentary. A lot of just master shots and then one tight and one tight. It's very standard. And the editing is a little bit off. But again, that makes it feel charming. When I watch the Wes Anderson movies where he has like a play within a movie or a movie within a movie and there's a stodginess to it, it takes me right back to Cabin Boy, except Cabin Boy wasn't being tongue-in-cheek with it. That's just what they were doing. That's what they had to work with. And it works. There's a charm to it, that the fact that it is kind of rudimentary.
Yeah, and I love a lot of people were criticizing, Chris Elliott's acting, that it was kind of over the top and he added an accent to it. But to me, it feels like he was in a Hammer movie,
Right.
like a gothic Hammer movie. The way he was just kind of, his style of acting over the top and reaching for the balcony type of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's so many cool little parts in there too. Like Alfred Molina,
dude,
is. It just pops out of nowhere, and apparently he thought he had a different part and showed up to set, and they're like, well, no, you have a little minor role here, and he's like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, at that point in time, Alfred Molina probably would have been most known for his Indiana Jones role, right? And I think Not Without My Daughter. He hadn't done Chocolat yet, and then the kind of bigger explosion in the 90s, and then the big explosion with Spider-Man 2. But yeah, every time I see him pop up in there, I'm like, I forgot that Alfred Molina is the headmaster or the teacher for like 10 minutes, if that, barely that.
Well, not even him, but was it Melora Walters?
Melora Walters.
Those are two Boogie Nights.
Two Boogie Night alum, right? And this was like only her third or fourth picture. She hadn't done her little bit part in Sydney yet, which would eventually turn into a bigger role in Boogie Nights, and then practically one of the major leads in Magnolia. Yeah. And it's funny too, because like I always made fun of her performance for years, and that like she's so just abrasive, and I wasn't sure if I liked it. But then when she kind of brings that same energy but more dramatic to the PTA movies, I was like, okay, no, I dig it. This is just her. And we know women like her in real life. And I think that's the part that I wasn't sure about at first, because it hit too close to home of like, oh, this woman's always yelling at me, like one of my cousins or something. But it works in this movie because she yells at him.
Yeah,
and then
she's great.
She's
a spark plug.
The rapport between those two definitely grew on me over time. The scene in the crow's nest where he's like trying to flirt with her and she's almost into it, and then he totally ruins it, but he keeps on going. Like, she's like, well, it was nice almost having a connection with you. Like, it's great dialogue and she delivers it perfectly.
Oh yeah, she's a great contrast to all the guys on the ship, the crew, because they're very kind of similar in their own little unique, quirky ways. But she comes in and brings like kind of a ray of sunshine to everything. I think Resnick described it as finally when she comes on screen, there's something beautiful to look at instead of just a bunch of guys spitting and vomiting on a ship. So I thought she was a great choice. I can't remember if there was anyone else that was supposed to that they were looking at for her, but yeah, she's great. She's great in everything.
I mean, looking in the press kit that you sent me, I didn't see anything else about it, but yeah, she has the smallest bio out of everybody, but it's a perfect segue into, I'd say, what really makes this movie work. Because here's the thing, Chris Elliott's shtick is going to be Chris Elliott's shtick no matter what film he's in. He really is him. And I love the fact that he was able to ride that all the way through, 5 or 6 seasons of Schitt's Creek, and he's still doing the same shtick, but it works. You hire him for that. When you need that character, that's who you hire.
Right.
But the 3 pirates and the captain, or I should say fishermen, the 3 fishermen and the captain, I think are what really make this movie work for me. They have the best lines, they have the best personas, and these are just 3 recognizable faces from genre film. And then the captain, Rich Brinkley, was a main face in Get a Life. So you've got Rich Brinkley, you've got James Gammon, Brian Doyle Murray, and Brian James. From some of my favorite films of all time. Of course, Brian Doyle Murray in any of the Lampoon movies, or Scrooged, Groundhog's Day, Brian James in Blade Runner, which is my favorite film of all time. I particularly like him, though, in Southern Comfort as the one Cajun dude who tracks them down throughout the end. And then James Gammon normally plays like a policeman or an FBI agent. And here he is like the real grumpy, salty fisherman of the... they're great. Everyone does a great job.
Yeah, I felt like he was on the verge of a heart attack every time he spoke a line of dialogue. I'm like, dude, are you okay? You need to sit down.
Right. I always make fun of Brian James' weird Cockney Australian accent that he uses in Tango and Cash.
Oh yeah.
And have you heard the story behind that?
No, I don't think so. No.
So Stallone, that character was supposed to be a different character. Brian James got hired to play one guy. And then somehow in all the script doctoring that Stallone did, they combined 2 characters together, and Stallone forgot. So Brian James shows up on call one day to do this scene, and Stallone tells him that, hey, you were supposed to have an accent in this. He's like, well, I just shot a bunch of scenes where I don't have an accent. He's like, well, use an accent. So he used this accent, which is terrible, and Stallone liked it so much they went back and they shot the other scenes again with him using this silly accent, which is why at the end of the movie of Tango and Cash, not to go off on a tangent, Stallone fights him, but Kurt Russell has to fight a total random dude because it was supposed to be the same guy, and they screwed up, and so they just threw a stunt guy to fight him. Anyway, Brian James is probably the most reserved character of this ship.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think I saw, I think I read, or maybe it was on one of the extras on the Blu-ray, that Chris Elliott, through his Letterman connection and through Brian Doyle Murray, obviously had tapped Bill Murray to be in it at one point to play the giant ogre that Mike Starr plays.
Right, Mulligan.
Towards the end. So, you could imagine it looks like he was trying to get some bigger people in this, and that might have helped it a little bit. But I thought Mike Starr was great, in the movie. I guess we're fast forwarding a little bit, but I thought Mike Starr was great, and I just thought it was cool that he all these guys from Get a Life and Letterman, they're all pulling these resources together to make this thing.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like a team effort. There doesn't feel like anyone's trying to outshow one another. And when you realize that this is a Tim Burton adjacent project, it would make sense the fact that, okay, so as they're getting this produced, he's already on Ed Wood, and he's got Bill Murray and Ed Wood, right? It's just an interesting, this is almost like the ugly stepchild of Ed Wood. It'd be a movie that Ed Wood would probably want to make, and that's why they kind of work in the same universe, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think the other thing too that we have to talk about is like the cameos. So the other interesting faces that show up, Ricky Lake as the ship's
Yeah.
masthead, and she's only like actually there a couple times, like once when the boat's freezing, and then once when she grows a beard, and then once at the beginning, and then it is just like a figurine the rest of the time. But it is fun to kind of like spot, oh, is Ricky Lake in this shot? Is Ricky Lake in this shot? I think that's great. And Magnuson showing up as Mulligan's wife, Kali, with the 6 arms. This is another thing where like this movie had a smaller budget than it was supposed to if Tim Burton would have made it, but it still looks like it's got quite a budget and it still does a lot with it. The puppetry of her arms always impresses me. The fact that like this is kind of a shoddy movie, but the way they do her arms all moving in unison, and then when she like embraces him to clean his pipes, I was like, that's great.
Yeah. And I just assumed those were like real people like hiding back there with real arms, but supposedly they are puppeteer animatronic arms moving. So that's really cool that they were able to pull that off. I figured like with that budget, they probably would have
Right.
just had like some guys with like skinny waistlines back there, you know, with big arms doing that. But
Right.
yeah, it's really cool. And Ricky Lake too, they said on the, I think that's on the Blu-ray too, that, you know, she had to wear so much makeup and special effects stuff to play the masthead that they said a funny story was they were talking to her one day and she said, hi, you know, I got this, there's a possibility I might do this little talk show or something. I'm not sure. And they were like, oh, that's nice for you, but we're making a movie here. So, you know, good luck on that. Yeah. Just amazing, like your perspective of, you know, how things go in show business. You know, you think you're filmmakers now, we're making films. And then this little person that's like, you know, playing the masthead ends up to be the most successful person on the shoot.
Well, Ricky Lake's career has always fascinated me, and it also tracks that she's in a film like this, coming from the John Waters universe, you know, from Hairspray and Serial Mom. Like, it just makes sense that she would be the masthead. And then going on to having her own talk show, I think is such a weird career leap. But hey, good for her, because I think most people now recognize her from her talk show than her obscure John Waters movies and then the masthead in Cabin Boy.
Definitely, for sure. Yeah, I would say so. I think she came out ahead on that deal.
And then seriously, like I think one of my favorite cameos of all time, because it's just so random, but it tracks with what this movie's trying to be, is we have Russ Tamblyn as Chalky, the half man, half shark. So you'd have to kind of know your classic films a little bit better. He was Riff in West Side Story. He was Tom Thumb. He was a song and dance man for the majority of like the 50s and 60s, and then ended up in all those crazy Al Adamson biker movies of the 70s. And Tarantino loved those so much, he ended up putting him in Django Unchained with his daughter, Amber Tamblyn. And here he is playing a half man, half shark. So kind of, you can see the nostalgia there. It's like, hey, remember Russ Tamblyn from all those crazy, like, Puppetoon looking movies from the 50s? Let's have him play the half man, half shark who has an affection for Nathaniel.
Yeah, well, also too, he, you know, I'm a big Twin Peaks nut, so he was Dr. Jacoby, and so he was at that time, that particular year, he was coming off of Twin Peaks pretty hard, like that had just ended, I think, or around that time. So he was pretty hot. So it wasn't, you know, it didn't surprise me that he turned up in that. And so, you know, when I saw him at that age, that was Dr. Jacoby from Twin Peaks. I didn't know about West Side Story or any of that stuff at that time. So, you know, when I saw him, I was really pleasantly surprised, because I really love his character on Twin Peaks quite a bit.
100%. I mean, like he is a man who is just like deep in the world of genre filmmaking and genre television. And that's the thing, is like, I think people wouldn't appreciate this film as much, later generations, I should say, because so much of it revolves around what was going on in the world of television of the early 90s, right? Where we call it cult TV now, but things like Twin Peaks, things like Get a Life, if you go back and see like all these like 1-2 season dramas that we still talk about with reverence, in a sense, the things like Picket Fences, right? The David E. Kelly who wanted to be David Lynch, in my opinion, stuff. Like
Yeah.
they didn't make stuff like that for decades. And then once streaming became a thing, or if you got onto HBO and you had, shows like Dead Like Me, you would see them like reach back into the gift bag that all these early 90s cult TV shows gave them. And I think that's the origin of it. Like it really started there. And a lot of these people in these shows were in there. Like, I'm amazed that we don't have more Twin Peaks people in this show, because it feels like they would kind of belong, right?
Yeah. Well, also too, I think the Ben Stiller show is
100%.
a big mark on this movie too, because later on, like that sort of crazy humor that Ben Stiller was trying to do, that show only lasted a season. I think that was about it. But Chris Elliott was later on in Something About Mary with Ben Stiller. So you have all these kind of little key components all coming together in different formations on different projects, which is really, really, really great. Because I was a huge fan of the Ben Stiller show. It was just so weird,
Yeah. It'd go on to
Odenkirk
spawn
playing Manson in the Lassie
right.
spoof. So it's just really weird stuff, and Cabin Boy fits into that mold
100%
so
it does.
perfectly.
Yeah, 100% it does. You can tell that, like, they definitely wrote the film for Chris Elliott to star in, because that was kind of the deal, right? We're going to develop a show for Chris Elliott to star in, just like he didn't get a life. But yeah, I could see that could have easily been someone like Ben Stiller. It could have easily been someone like Odenkirk, or even Andy Dick in a weird way. Like, there are a lot of personas from the early 90s that could have easily fit in this. Not that I want them to, but you can see what the overall tone of the early 90s and the cult humor and the cult TV was. 100%.
Yeah, and it didn't matter. Like, I mean, Cabin Boy, like whatever project that you put Chris Elliott in, he's going to be Chris Elliott. He doesn't have like a deep amount of range. He's not going to try and, he's not at a Jim Carrey level where he's going to do Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Right.
He's going to be the jerk kind of thing of Chris Elliott. That's his shtick, and he sticks to it, and it works.
Yeah, it's not to say the man doesn't have range. I think he just knows what to do with what God gave him, right?
Yeah,
and who knows?
Absolutely.
His time might not be over. We might see a weird dramatic performance from him in the future. We've seen weirder things happen, man, and most of the time I'm up for it. Like, if you get daring with your casting and put like a former 90s comedian in a dramatic role. Whoever would have thought that Bob Odenkirk could be an action star, for example, right? And he's got two films to prove
even
it.
in Breaking Bad, for that matter. I mean,
right.
100%.
You go back and watch old Giancarlo Esposito movies. He's a goofball, like in the Spike Lee movies and in what's the one with Emilio Estevez?
Yeah, that's right. He was in the arcade, Maximum Overdrive.
Maximum Overdrive. Yeah. He's in the arcade, and he gets electrocuted, and he's goofy as fuck. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the one last thing too I want to talk about before we start talking about the aftermath of Cabin Boy is the fact that Steve Bartek's music, that's fascinating to me. So he was the guitarist for Oingo Boingo. And so I think it's funny that it's okay if we can't get Danny Elfman to do the music because he's doing all the music for Tim Burton right now. Let's get the guitarist, Steve Bartek. And it is kind of Elfman-esque, but it's also good on its own. It doesn't feel too much like an Elfman clone, and I kind of like that. But it fits with the movie, and it fits with the idea of they're paying homage to those fantasy films of the 50s and 60s, the high seas adventures. It really works. Like I said, the production value of sets and costume and music and makeup all makes this movie so much better than it has any right to be. There's love
I'm
there.
Glad. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. I had that in my notes that I wrote that down on my little notepad that it has a very Elfman-like score, when it starts. And even though the opening credits, you get that Elfman-like feeling.
Right.
Just because of the imagery that they show with the fish, little animated fish coming up, kind of like a Monty Python type of opening. And so you immediately get that feeling that you're going to watch a Tim Burton movie.
Mm-hmm.
It is very Elfman-like. And so it sets you in that Burton-esque feel right from the offset, and that's because of the score.
And it also does, I think, kind of beat to the punch some of the more outlandish Saturday Night Live ideas that became films, right? Because up to this point, let's see, this is 94. So we'd had Coneheads, which is fantastical, but it is kind of familiar because Coneheads were such an iconic thing from the show. Same with Wayne's World. Like there's a surrealism to it, a suspension of disbelief. But later on, the Saturday Night Live movies got a little bit more ambitious, a little bit more goofy. And I feel like this kind of exists in that same realm, but it's
Yeah.
not anything to do with Saturday Night Live. None of the writers, none of the producers, none of the people involved. And so that also, I think, might be a thing to it because there was a lot of, I'm going to say, gatekeeping with the Saturday Night Live comedians, filmmakers, and producers, where if something tried to ape an SNL production, it'd get shot down, it'd get criticized, they'd make fun of it on the show itself. And so I feel because this one did its best to kind of stay away and not try to relate to a Saturday Night Live production, it kind of flew under the radar when it came to that. But then the critics came out to play. So let's talk about the aftermath now, because I just remember it being talked about like, it's a bad movie. And I just defended like, I like it. I didn't realize that this was almost like a metaphor for failure for over a decade in the industry.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, in that interview too, they talked about how, they could not get work. I mean, I think Elliot got work. He was on SNL, ironically, what you just mentioned, for like a year that
After
he said
fact.
was a terrible. But he said that was a disaster for him too. And then I guess his daughter was on there, later on.
Oh, she's on the Bear now. She's got a big name for herself. Yeah.
Yeah. And well, and his dad is in Cabin Boy and Get a Life too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and they said that they had even pitched like a bunch of projects to a big studio, and everyone in the studio or everyone in the meeting said, "Oh yeah, this is a go. This is fantastic. We laughed. We loved it." And then they get a call and they said, "Oh, the studio head who wasn't in the meeting found out that you guys had done Cabin Boy and it's off. They don't want to work with you."
And there was a lot of that.
Yeah. So I'm sure that just rinsed and repeat constantly for their career for like a long time.
They don't talk a lot about what their post-Cabin Boy relationship with Tim Burton was. I was watching one of these interviews with Elliot where he was doing like a Q&A for a screening of Cabin Boy, and he was talking about that up until the film's release, he was still like taking lunches with Tim Burton and having all these ideas about future projects. Tim Burton wanted to do a silly kind of like riff on Star Trek. He wanted to do a space show, and he wanted Chris Elliott to be the captain. And he's like, I just remember sitting at lunch with Tim Burton, and he was drawing pictures of aliens. He's like, this is going to be your alien sidekick, and this is going to be the guy that flies your ship, blah, 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 blah. And then the second Cabin Boy comes out and gets bad reviews, they never heard from Tim Burton again, which I think is so... I mean, that's Hollywood, right? Like, it's tragic, but at the same time, it's kind of expected.
But he was the hot director at the time, so he could do no wrong. Right. And just to refer to that interview again, they said that they were in a meeting with him, and the first reviews for Batman Returns came out, and that's when he decided that he didn't want to do Cabin Boy and passed it on to them. And they said the reason why they took it is they didn't want to disappoint him.
Right.
Because they had kind of elevated them, but also too, none of the executives from like either Warner Brothers or Disney, the two companies he was working with at the time, they didn't want to piss off Tim Burton because they wanted to work with him. So they were willing to give them money to make Cabin Boy just to keep Tim Burton happy. And it had nothing to do with Chris Elliott or Resnick. Like, it was just basically something to keep Tim Burton happy.
Right.
So you hear Letterman talk about it too, where when he was on set, he just said that he was great because he was just so proud of them. They were like kind of like his proteges, and he was like excited that they were making movies and stuff. Whereas I don't think it meant that much to Tim Burton. I think Tim Burton was in his own cloud, floating,
getting whatever
away
he wanted
from everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
which honestly, I think that that kind of did lead to, I'm not going to say the downfall because he's never really had a downfall, but there is a very particular moment in time where I think we realized that Tim Burton was just given too much license to do what he
Mm.
wanted, and he kind of like started just parodying himself and became
Oh
a
yeah, for
character, a
sure.
caricature of himself as a filmmaker. And then sometimes he brings it back, and then he just dives right back into it. It's an interesting thing because there is. It's hard for me to think of a filmmaker that has so many big swings and hits, but then has just as many, if not more, swings and misses, and is allowed to continue doing that. Like,
Yeah,
you don't see a lot of
I
that.
mean,
If you have two misses, you're kind of done, and you have to wait 10 years and then come back with a small indie movie and build your cachet back up.
yeah, I mean, but there's a lot of filmmakers today that get a lot more rope, like Wes Anderson. Like he's clearly in his own head right now, and he could probably use a little bit of pullback, maybe. But I don't know. I mean, yeah, Burton is hit and miss. We're definitely like clear of the days where we're like, oh my God, Tim Burton's got a new movie coming out.
You're right.
We're kind of now we're just sort of like,
It's like, we need
I don't
another
know.
Alice in Wonderland movie.
Yeah, some more bad CG.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing that was always cool about Burton to me was not the CG. It was the craftsmanship of the special effects, and that's what makes Cabin Boy so cool too. Is it the Harryhausen, the snowman, the cupcakes that spit tobacco. Those are all like practical stop motion things that people made with their hands, and they have a charm about it, and that's what's great about Cabin Boy too.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that, even Wes Anderson continued to use a lot of kind of stop motion claymation in his films, Life Aquatic especially. Like, yeah, this does bring a lot of that back, especially the year that it came out. You're a year removed from the real kind of birthplace of CG in movies with Jurassic Park. I'll say The Abyss, but The Abyss had just such a little bit of it, but then Jurassic Park is the one that really made an impact. And then you go back to like the practical effects, and it's weird because it seems nostalgic, but it really wasn't that far removed from being like the common practice of special effects. It's just a really interesting thing that technology took off so fast that everything seemed retro by comparison. But the whole film feels retro, and I think that's what makes it charming. Is that it's
Yeah,
intentionally trying to feel aged. It's intentionally trying to feel like the Spencer Tracy movie Captain Courageous, right? And that's what,
yeah,
yeah, that's what works for it.
yeah. It's supposed to have that Ray Harryhausen Argonauts, kind of Clash of the Titans a little bit sort of feel to it. And even though I don't know. Sometimes you were talking about SNL earlier in the movies. To me, when I rewatched Cabin Boy, it kind of reminded me of something that Lonely Island might make today, like
I
as a
wish.
a digital short or something.
Right.
Like because the fish stick uh,
Fish to
kitties
kitties.
that Chris Elliott makes and the cupcakes. I think I mentioned that kind of feels like something that the Lonely Island guys would do. So, and that's what makes the Lonely Island stuff so cool is that it is kind of handmade at times like that, and that's because they don't have the money to do a big budget thing.
Well, it's a combination, I think, of not having the money, but even if they were given the money, they know what works for them. They know like practical answers are always the ones. If you're gonna be egregious with CG, it's almost like a wink at the audience now. Like, look how bad the CG is. And so when it's
Yeah,
self-aware, I actually kind of get that. That's one of the reasons too. I'm not a huge Deadpool fan, but what I do appreciate about the Deadpool movies is that they are very much winking at the audience, saying, "Hey, we know this is bad CG, but we're gonna make a joke about it, and that makes everything all better."
yeah.
It's kind of cracking the code of accountability of what your movie looks like.
Well, at this point too, I think they also know that these are bad movies.
Right, right, right.
We've degenerated these things into really bad clones of each other, just copies of copies of copies, and so we're making fun of that.
And they are still willing to gamble on the opening weekend box office that will save the day. And no,
Yeah,
I think, I mean, you're in the industry, we're seeing a lot of pullback from that, and hearing stories like, okay, well, now we need to start putting out like these smaller films, these more personal films, these more original films. And it's like, yeah, we learned that in the 90s. It's why Miramax was so big, because people were getting tired of all the bullshit. You're just going to repeat it, But
Yeah.
now the companies that we are looking at that we thought were going to save the industry, like A24 and Neon, now they're going balls deep on the AI stuff too. So who knows what that's going to do? Like, they were supposed to be the saviors of cinema. And now, are they going to actually save it, or are they just going to turn it into more of this nonsense that we've been dealing with? And that's why I think movies like Cabin Boy are so important, because there are films out there that broke away from whatever the norm was becoming of cinema. I don't need a CG laden extravaganza of a movie. This little dinky movie with stop motion animation and a goofy main character, it might not make all the money in the world. It probably won't, but it is going to grow an audience of appreciators that your bullshit comic book movie isn't. Perfect example. How much did you pay for your Blu-ray of Cabin Boy used on eBay?
I'm embarrassed, man. I don't even want to say.
No, you can't.
I think it was upwards of $50, to be honest with you.
100%.
But
I got mine
I
a little
didn't
bit
know.
cheaper.
I didn't even know. I didn't even know it was out, to be honest with you, or that it had come out. So
right. I got mine a little bit cheaper because I got it right when it came out, because I was like waiting for it to drop. But how many bargain bins are just full of bullshit Marvel movies? That's all you see whenever you go to a physical media store or a Walmart or a Target. And that's my point. Like, it may not break the bank financially, but the fact that there's people who are willing to pay that much money for a movie, wait for a great release of it, and willing to throw all of their Marvel movies into the bargain bin, to me, that speaks volumes in the terms of cinema appreciation, where it's like, audiences are smarter than the industry thinks. Like, yeah, we might go pay our opening weekend bullshit money for your movie, but at the end of the day, it's like, when I go to the thrift store, when I go to the used movie store down the street, they stop taking Star Wars movies and Marvel movies because they have too many of them, because no one wants that shit on their shelf anymore.
Yeah. That's like, even my YouTube channel, like, I get a lot of comments like, why don't you cover new movies? And I just say, I don't want to cover new movies. Like, what's to cover? They've all been covered ad nauseum. Like, I don't ever want to talk about Star Wars. I mean, I have done a little Star Wars piece on there, but it was an older interview. And so there's nothing to talk about with Marvel movies. Like, they're all out there, everything out there. There's 50,000 YouTube videos telling you about Deadpool versus Wolverine. What possible thing can I contribute to that? But what we can do is talk about Cabin Boy, a movie that's amazingly funny that no one saw. We can expose that.
Right. And then someone who, your channel is like the perfect place for that, because, over time you've built a very loyal audience, but you also get a lot of tourists. And I think that's really important, because if you can draw a tourist in to one of your video essays on a film that they like, and the magic of YouTube, the algorithm, but also seeing all the other essays you've done, it is exposure to other types of cinema. And I think that's really crucial these days. It's why physical media is getting cool again. It's why these boutique labels are being sought after in the both new and used markets, is because people didn't know what they were missing for all these years. Like, oh, I'll just stream it. Oh, wait, it's not on streaming. Oh, well, I'll just, throw away my DVD collection because I can always just watch it on Amazon. Oh, wait, I don't own the rights to that thing anymore. Like, that is such an important thing that people, I think, are getting into now. And slightly off topic, the fact that now with Spotify and some things on YouTube and other streaming apps, that we have to put all of our personal information to prove who we are and how old we are. I'm sorry, I'm going to go dig my CD wallet out of the basement and listen to music that way again. I don't want to give you all of my info again and again and again. I think we're going to have a mini revolution of content in the near future as people get sick of giving all their info to these apps, and they're going to start filling their shelves again, which, okay, I love that for the cause, but also I'm like, stay out of my used media shop and stay out of my thrift stores, because that's where I go to get my stuff every week. I don't need you guys pilfering it before I get there.
Yeah, be careful. Don't let them know the secrets that we carry. You know, we need
They're
we
not
need to have
getting
our shops empty so we can get our good stuff.
right. Yeah, everyone just go to Amoeba in Los Angeles. Go there.
I like Amoeba a lot. It is a little overpriced,
But yeah,
but
because
you do find
it's
some
the
cool stuff
mecca. You
there.
know, they can get away with it.
I know, I know. Well, everyone's selling stuff there too, which is, there's just a constant flow of new things coming in from film geeks there. So
100%. As we kind of recap this, let's say, what are your favorite moments of Cabin Boy? What sticks with you? Do you have a most quotable line? Is there something that you just really keep with you from Cabin Boy more than anything else?
well, I mean, there's the obvious ones, the pipes line and all that stuff. But I think on this watch, my favorite line was when he sees the multi-armed lady in the cave, uh, and he says, I think the line was, "My goodness, you must spend a fortune on mitts."
Yes.
That one stuck out to me. I've been saying that one to myself quite a bit recently. But
For
no, overall, I don't know. There's so many things in Cabin Boy. I mean, I love the Letterman scene. That's iconic, obviously. Russ Tamblyn. We talked about that. The fish sticks. I love that. Man, I don't know. I love seeing Chris Elliott's dad, Bob from Bob and Ray. I loved seeing Bob, and I think he was on the Get a Life too. So
Yep.
I love seeing that. It was kind of short. So I just like the whole thing. Like it's almost like a time capsule, when you watch it. It brings back so many memories, of Letterman and Get a Life and Ben Stiller show and, Twin Peaks, all that stuff. There's a lot of nostalgia rush. So I'm curious to know how it would play to like a younger person, like say in their teens or something like that. I wonder how they would take this.
I know, like right before the Blu-ray came out from Kino Lorber, I know they screened it at the New Beverly, and it was a sold out screening. Like people go for it. It hasn't screened anywhere here in Salt Lake City, but if it did, I'd definitely be first in line for it. It's got a lot, like you said, nostalgia. I'm not sure how it plays to younger people. The people I've screened it for, like I said, they liked it better than Drop Dead Fred, but that doesn't mean that they were initiated into the cult of Cabin Boy. They just happen to
Yeah.
like it better than Drop Dead Fred. But yeah, it definitely is something for like that Gen Xer, early millennial audience that caught it either in the theater or on VHS, quote it all the time. You know,
And
it's just one of those movies.
I don't know if Adam Resnick will ever hear this podcast. If he does, my message to him is, dude, don't be ashamed of your movie, because in everything I've seen of him talk about it, he says that he hasn't watched it in a long time, since they color corrected it, and he just doesn't want to think about it. But dude, you should embrace this movie like it's your film. We all make bad stuff that we're ashamed of or something at one point, but it is a fun movie. It has a life beyond that, and that's the true mark of a really good film, is if people rediscover it and keep remembering it. So, and you did that. So don't be ashamed of your film, man. It's a testament to how much fun and crafty it is. It's just, be proud of your film. Hopefully you hear this.
Yeah, be proud of your film. Be proud of the characters that you created, and just be proud of the cult that you've built, That's the thing, is like I think we've seen so many documentaries about musicians that had like maybe one hit, and like the Searching for Sugar Man, like things like that, where it's like these people didn't even know that they had a following until someone came to make a movie about it, right? And I know he knows that they have a following, and Chris Elliott knows they have a following. Does that translate into dollars? Probably not. But people are gonna be talking about Cabin Boy until the end of the world. I guarantee it. Like it's not gonna be a movie that just falls off the face of the earth. There's going to be a cult of Cabin Boy from now until the end of time. I just know there is. It's just one of those movies that's just too weird to die. And yeah,
Yes.
100%.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So you haven't done a video essay on Cabin Boy, have you?
No, and that was one of the reasons why you did stuff. You did the Brain Candy and Brain Donors, is because I don't have a lot of comedy on the Cinema Force YouTube channel, and so I wanted to put some more comedy up there. I've only done Summer School, that one. I think that may be it. So we're kind of lacking in comedy, but I wouldn't rule out a Cabin Boy essay at some point.
Yeah, or more comedies. Because if there's one thing I
Yeah.
love about Cinema Force, it is diving into like specific genres, whether it's film noir or you guys were really into the Hitchcock or the Quatermass movies. Like I'm not super familiar with those, so listening to your essays got me excited to go back and revisit some of those. But cult comedies, and that's why I had every ounce of respect for you for asking me to do the Brain Donors, Brain Candy one, because those were movies that I was just madly in love with that no one ever talks about. And I put a lot of time and care into it because it's like, okay, even if people don't go and watch these movies, I want them to know that I like these movies and that,
Oh yeah.
yeah,
It was hard editing those too, because I love every second of both of those films. So I just wanted to put the whole, every bit on there, but you have to kind of pick and choose, what you can throw up there, or what YouTube will allow you to show. But yeah, I appreciate you doing it. I definitely want you to do another one too. We got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Jennifer Upton is doing Kiyoshi Kurosawa's Cure coming up.
nice.
That's a really good movie. And then we got some more Hammer stuff coming for Halloween. And then I guess I can talk about this. We'll call it a Cultworthy exclusive.
Ooh,
Rich Johnson and I collaborated with the Punisher himself, Thomas Jane, and Thomas Jane has done an essay for us on Westerns. So that'll be coming up at some point.
fascinating. I just watched Deep Blue Sea the other night. We did our cult movie month last month was Deep Blue Sea and Deep Rising. It was aquatic horror. And it was so weird to me that I had some of the younger people in the audience being like, who is this main guy? I'm like, that's Thomas Jane. Don't you know? He's the Punisher. Haven't you guys
Yeah.
watched Hung on HBO? Okay, like we're having a Thomas Jane night.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah,
he
I'm
was
excited.
great, man. We went out to LA and recorded him. He was really cool to work with, and he really got into it. And so it's all done. We're just kind of waiting on some stuff he's got a new Western coming out pretty soon. So we're going to wait till that comes out.
Cool, man. All right, so everyone, you gotta go onto YouTube and subscribe to Cinema Force, and then you also promote a lot of your stuff on Instagram. That's where I first found you after people recommended your channel to me. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen Cinema Force on Instagram. So yeah, it's a great place, a great channel, lots of great information, great essays, and really successful. I'm so proud of all your success that you show on there, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Oh, thanks, man. I was a big fan of your show. And so, I guess we kind of met through Phil from Making Tarantino.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to have this little community of friends now that we can all kind of chat and talk about film. So it's been really great for me, because I'm in Texas and I know you're in Utah, right?
Yep.
And so
And Phil's in
yeah,
Arizona.
not a lot of
yeah. Yeah.
not a it's kind of lonely to be a film fan in these parts. So it's great to find you and everybody else, and your show's just fantastic. I love it.
I appreciate that. So, with that, I'm going to say thank you very much, Eric, for talking about Cabin Boy for an hour with me. I want to go watch it again now. I've already watched it. I've watched the special features. I read the press kit that you sent me, and now I want a second helping. It's just who I am. So everyone, please like, subscribe, rate, review, not only to Cinema Force, but to the Cultworthy as well as my other show, Back to the Balcony, which is my Siskel and Ebert retrospective. You can find all the links to Eric's stuff in the notes of this episode and in my Cultworthy Partners page on thecultworthy.com. And with that, man, I'm going to say have a great day.
All right, you too, man. See you later.